Afternoon. This is Jill Paperno, and today I have the honor of interviewing Sue Laluk. She is a former MCBA president, and we're going to be talking about some time she spent as president of the Monroe County Bar Association. So Sue, what type of law do you practice now?
I'm a partner at Barclay Damon, and I practice primarily business law, mostly corporate. I do a little bit of employment law, some licensing and trademark work.
Okay. And how did you first become involved with the Monroe County Bar Association?
Well, fortunately, both the firms I've been with, Boylan Code and Barclay Damon, are very supportive of Monroe County Bar as well as other bar associations. So that was helpful. And some of the attorneys I practiced with encouraged me to join. I initially got involved primarily with the Business Law Council, and I was on the Business Law Council for a long time, ended up being chair of that for a while. I also was involved in the Labor and Employment Law section and the Intellectual Property Law Committee. And then I got involved with the Academy of Law, and I actually served as dean of the Academy for a while. And then, no good deed goes unpunished. So I got recruited to serve on the Board of Trustees. And so I was a trustee back in, I think, 1998 and 2000. So I did that for a couple of years. And then a few years later in 2008, I became treasurer for a couple of years. And then I became president-elect, and then president, and then immediate past president. So I actually served on the Board of Trustees for 5 years in those capacities.
So it sounds like you originally came based on kind of your business interests and things that connected with the work you did, but then you stayed on for a lot longer than that. What were some of the things that you stayed on for? What were some of the reasons?
I think mostly, well, it was a nice way for me to connect with other people in the community, in the legal community. As a non-litigator, you don't get out of the office as much. And you don't deal with other attorneys as much. And so it was a great way for me to get to know other lawyers in other practices throughout the community. And also it just to be involved in the community and some of the good work that the Bar Association does. I also did Lawyers for Learning for a few years at School 29, so that was very gratifying as well.
And for those who aren't familiar with Lawyers for Learning, can you describe what that was?
Yeah, it's a partnership between the Bar Association and a school that's in a challenging area in the city. And you make a commitment once a week to go into the school, and they pair you up with one or two students, or sometimes with a teacher. And you go in and you just do whatever, you read with them, you help them with their homework. If you're paired with a teacher, you basically, whatever the teacher needs to be done, have done in any particular day. But and then they also do special events. They do pizza days with the kids and things like that. So it was a great way. And it's kind of fun. The kids, it's a nice way for the kids because they start to associate lawyers with positive things. And so you walk in the school and the kid will be like, "Oh, whose lawyer are you?" And they all want to have a lawyer to work with them. So that was a lot of fun. So
what year did you become president of the Bar Association?
I gotta check my notes on that. 2010, 2011, I was president of the bar.
And when you became president, did the board have a particular focus that year?
Initially, we worked a lot on continuing legal education initiatives, and which, was kind of near and dear to my heart, having been involved with the Academy. And judicial evaluations was kind of a big deal that year. But really the biggest issue, it's never anything you plan on. Towards the end of my term, marriage equality was pending in the New York State Legislature. And we got a call from the New York State Bar Association. They were supporting marriage equality, and they were looking for local and affinity bar associations to join them in supporting it. And so I brought it to the board, and we had a long discussion, and the board eventually decided, through a supermajority actually, that we wanted to support that initiative. And so we got involved with that. There were, I think, about 20 bar associations that supported the legislation throughout the New York State. Although not too many county bars. We were one of the few county bars that they jumped on board. And so we had articles in the Daily Record and the DNC. We rallied on the steps of City Hall. And then Vince Doyle, who was president of the New York State Bar Association at the time, he contacted me and he said, Jim Alisi is one of the, he was a New York State senator in the Penfield-Parrington region. And he was actually my state senator at the time where I lived. And they said, well, we think he might be one of the swing votes. He was a Republican who had voted against it the last time it came up, but they thought he was a lawyer, so they thought, you know, he might listen to the legal arguments. And so he agreed to meet with us. So Vince and I met with Jim and talked to him about why we thought it was worth supporting. We gave him a copy of New York State Bar Association did a really nice study, basically showing that, you know, a lot of people were at that point in time, it wasn't that long ago, but a lot has changed. But back then it was like, well, maybe civil unions or just domestic partnership laws will do it. And the New York State Bar Association had done a study that basically showed, no, that legally that is not enough. That really doesn't promote true equality. And we really need to have marriage equality passed. And so we met with Jim and he was pretty receptive, although he didn't make a commitment at the time, but then he ended up being the first Republican who switched his vote in favor of the law, and the law did pass. And I actually happened to be, the weekend that it passed was the New York State Bar Association meeting in Cooperstown. And so I was there as a delegate when the legislation passed. And it was kind of funny because one of the reporters from the New York Law Journal was nosing around and interviewing people. So he interviewed me. And at one point he said to me, he said, I assume that now that marriage equality has passed, you're going to marry your partner. And he assumed I had a same-sex partner. And so my answer to him was, well, I think my husband of 27 years will probably have something to say about that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it clarified to me how important it is, you know, as straight people need to support LGBTQ rights, and whites need to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and men need to support women's rights. And as lawyers, we just need to support equal rights and civil rights. And that was really the focus. We ended up at the board meeting of the trustees when we were trying to decide whether to support it, because some of the members were concerned about the religious implications or the societal issues. And ultimately we came down to, this is a legal issue and people need to be equal before the law. And this is an important aspect of being equal before the law. So that was kind of how we came down on that, with that position.
So that's wonderful to hear that the Bar Association had such a prominent voice statewide, and that you were so, as an individual and as a representative of the bar, so involved in assisting to make that a reality. That's I
don't know how much credit we can take, but it was interesting. You know, it was interesting to be, it was very gratifying to be involved in it, at least some small part. So, and I was really proud of our Bar Association for taking the position.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any other highlights or events that took you by surprise during the course of your term?
Not in particular, though. It was interesting for me personally because I ended up changing. I had been with my first firm, Boyle & Brown, now Boyle & Code, for 25 years. And I ended up joining my new firm, Barclay Damon, the day I became bar president. And so that was kind of interesting. But like I said, I was very lucky because both my partners at Boylan and my partners at Barclay were very supportive of the Bar Association and of my presidency. So,
Now, as I've mentioned in some of the other interviews that you haven't seen, it's kind of a 3-year gig when you sign on to be the president. You start out as president-elect, and then president, and then immediate past president. And it can be a pretty busy 3 years with that. After your term ended as immediate past president, did you remain involved? Did you take a little break with the Bar Association?
It certainly wasn't as intense. And for me, it was actually a 5-year gig because I did 2 years as treasurer before I became president-elect. So I did want to have a little bit of time to have more time to practice law and such. But no, I did stay involved, and I ended up for a couple of years, I co-chaired the labor and employment law section. And now I'm actually finally old enough to be in the senior attorneys group. So I've been really enjoying that part of it, you know. So
can you describe the senior attorneys group a little bit?
Yeah, we get together once a month, and we've been doing it by Zoom for the last year because we haven't been comfortable getting together in person. And they often get a guest speaker and, you know, all sorts of, you know, sometimes it's a former judge or sometimes it's someone in the community that they think people will be interested in. And it's just a way for, you know, when we do it in person, we usually do a lunch meeting at the Bar Association, but Zoom, we're just Zooming. But it's been a great way to stay in touch with a lot of people I know, particularly, and there's quite a few former bar presidents involved too. So it's kind of
when the time gets back for us to all get back to our spaces and to the Bar Association, I think you'll be really pleased to see some of the spaces for those lunches at the Bar Association if you choose to hold them there.
Very excited to see the new space. I haven't been able to see it in person yet, but I'm very excited about the move.
It's really nice. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute and ask you what it was like for a woman to practice law in your field when you first started.
Yeah, I graduated in 1985. And so by then, you know, things were starting to change. I didn't, you know, it wasn't like Ruth Bader Ginsburg where she got out and at the top of her class and couldn't find a job. My law school class had I went to University of Buffalo, and we had about 40% women in the law school class. So that was pretty substantial. But then once you got out into the legal field, you know, there were fewer women attorneys and much fewer women partners. So one of the decisions I made early on when I was looking for a job is I decided I did not want to be the only woman at a law firm. I wanted there to have some kind of support or someone else who kind of had blazed that trail. So when I joined my first firm, there was one other woman attorney, and it turned out to be a really good decision for me because you know, she went on maternity leave. And so when I asked for maternity leave, the firm was like, oh, okay, well, it worked last time we had a woman do it, so you can do it. And then I wanted to do part-time, and she had done part-time. And so that was easier. She had become a partner, and then I became a partner. And I think because of the fact that she had done it and done it well made it easier for me, really made me feel like, okay, I got to make this work well too, because I know there are going to be women coming after me, and I want the way I deal with this to help it be easier for them to deal with it. And it was a bigger deal then because there were so fewer women, you know, practicing. I do think being a business attorney probably has been easier than being a litigator. I think it's a little more rough and tumble for women in litigation. So I think, you know, the business world has just been a little more amenable to women. So I think that's helped. And I've been lucky to be in two firms that were supportive of women professionals. Actually, in Barclay Damon, we have a women's forum where we basically support women attorneys in the firm. We have events for women clients. We try to support leadership roles for women in the firm. And actually, we recently have our first woman managing partner for the firm. So that's pretty exciting. So I felt pretty fortunate in my career that I haven't run into some of the real horror stories that I hear from other women.
And when you became bar president, was there any difference you feel in being a woman bar president than being a man bar president, or didn't you get a sense that there was a difference?
I didn't feel that very much. I think, yeah, I was number 7 of the women. So, you know, before me, there was Beth and Meryl and Mary and Cheryl and Jill and June. And so by the time I became president-elect, it wasn't a big deal for a woman to be bar president. Now, I love it now that there's been like 2 in a row. That's very exciting because that hadn't happened by the time I had been bar president. But one of the things I did shortly before when I was president-elect, before I became president, is I invited all of the previous women bar presidents to lunch. And we went to the Bar Association and we ordered Chinese, and we had a lot of fun reading our fortune cookies together. But they had just given me some really just very practical, down-to-earth advice as to how to deal with being bar president. And so that was really helpful. But I didn't really sense a big difference being a woman bar president versus but I think it was probably because I was sort of later in I think early on it was probably more challenging than by the time I got there.
So it sounds like when you began working at your firm and through your career, you've had the support of other women and your firms, and I'm wondering, were there any incidents that you experienced as a woman attorney that reflect the different ways that women were treated when you started or through your career, or did you not have that kind of experience?
Like I said, I didn't have anything too egregious. I do remember back when I was interviewing in law school for, my first job as a lawyer. And they had, one of the firms that was interviewing on campus was one of the larger Rochester firms. And they had sent one of their male partners to do the interviews. And so, he's looking at my resume and we're talking about, law review and this and that. And then he says to me, are you married? And I was a little taken aback, but I had just recently gotten married. So I was like, yes. And then he said, do you have any children? And I was taken aback a little more. And I said, no. And then he asked me if I had plans to have children. And that's when the bells really were starting to go off. And I ended up, it turned out a couple other women attorneys who he had interviewed had experienced the same, or law students that he had interviewed experienced the same situation. And of course, none of the guys had. So we reported that to UB recruitment office, and they actually banned that law firm from interviewing on campus the following year. I'd like to hope that that doesn't happen very much anymore, but I was sort of taken aback because I hadn't experienced a lot of discrimination, and it was like, wait a minute, this is, what does this have to do with my qualifications as a lawyer? So, but like I say, for the most part, I've been pretty lucky, I think, with the kind of support I've had.
Sorry. Do you have any advice for younger women attorneys?
Yeah, I think, have you read the book, Sheryl Sanders' book, Lean In?
I did.
Although it's geared more towards women professionals in business, I thought a lot of it was pretty applicable to women attorneys, and just the whole concept of leaning in and don't be afraid to stay involved. And I guess I think my best advice, and this is going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but find people who will support you both professionally and personally. I've been lucky. My husband's always been supportive of my career, and I've had some really wonderful mentors, both male and female. It's great to have women mentors, but the guys, there's a lot of good male mentors out there as well. And, that can make a real difference throughout your career. When I made my job change after 25 years from one firm to the other, that was because of an attorney that actually a former male bar president that I had met through my involvement with the Bar Association. And so that wouldn't have happened but for my involvement with the Bar Association. And he's turned out to be one of my mentors at my new firm. So, and you need mentors when you're young, but it doesn't hurt at any point during your career.
I really have valued the relationships that I've made through the Bar Association too. It's just really kind of opened up all new opportunities to learn about different fields and get to know people. Let me ask you this. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in this interview before we wrap up today?
Not that I can think of, other than, I think this is a great idea. And, I probably wouldn't know you but for the Bar Association. So you're very right. It's, it's a great way to get to know other people, get to understand other practice areas, get to understand things about the community. So everything about the Bar Association has really been a very positive experience for me. I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to get involved.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you around. If not in person yet, we'll be seeing each other perhaps on Zooms through the Bar Association and other events.
Yep. Thanks so much for doing this, Jill.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.